because it's just that type of Monday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast, of which we're going to prove to you definitively over the course of the next 30 to 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how long we can sustain this stuff. I am your host, Deven Morgan, Director of Youth Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy, and I'm joined, as per usual, by my brother, my partner, my co-host, Driveline Academy Assistant Director, Driveline Academy International Man Mystery, Jeremy Tecteel.
Hello.
Housekeeping, as per usual, axbat.com, code DL20, Dominguez Leopard. Dominguez Leopard 20 will get you 20% off at axbat.com. Maybe I shouldn't do the Axe promo on a podcast where we're cutting it loose, but like...
No, you should. You should have just done it before. Yeah.
Maybe I'll edit that out and splice some stuff in Premiere. We'll do the thing. Skills Skill Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual. Hey, it's the last day of Plus Week. Hopefully, if you're a Plus member, you've gotten their value out of that in just this last week, because a lot of our stuff that's already discounted is discounted even further for Plus members.
And by the time this goes up, man, you missed it.
Yeah. So I guess I'm telling you about like the cool thing that just happened in your rear view. My bad. What else do we got? Youth Underload Smash Bat, Youth Power Bat. Both of those are great hitting tools that you can add to your library. We just put out a playlist of hitting drills that we did using those bats in partnership with our good friends at AxeBat that you can find on the Driveline Youth YouTube channel. Those are doing good numbers, which is great. So shout out to you guys that have kind of dug into those. Driveline Academy Power Hour, Driveline Hitting Power Hour, whatever you want to call it, is your player's ability to get a couple hitting sessions at a Driveline facility for free. That's pretty cool. It's a 60-minute session. It's programmatic, meaning that there's a couple different sections of a 60-minute training session. We're starting with just like some fun, let's try to catch barrels and get acclimated at an age-appropriate speed, middle heaters. The second section is the challenge section. We're going to get into higher velocity. We might show you some spin a little bit, whatever's appropriate for the kid. And then in the third section, we're just getting into a competition thing. And man, shout out to Quincy, who's one of our hitting interns here. Quincy has run a couple of the Power Hour sessions. And the best endorsement that I can give you for Power Hour, if you're local to a Driveline facility and you haven't signed up yet, is the feedback that I got from a customer who had one of his first experiences at Driveline was coming in for the Power Hour session. And he said, if I can find the right Slack channel.
He said, I felt like I just paid $20,000 for the service I got.
Yeah. I feel like I must have paid you guys $20,000 for the way I've been treated.
That's much better than the service I got, the way I've been treated.
And that's by design.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's by design for people to come in and experience this new thing, and for us to be like really excited to show it off because we're really proud of what we built, and we believe that it's pretty highly differentiated from other youth hitting experiences you might find for reasons that are probably not worth mentioning. I was in another facility last Friday where my son was catching a bullpen for a friend, and I saw a lesson being conducted. And man, when I tell you this thing we're offering, specifically with Power Hour, is like the thing that your player needs in order to engage with the skill of hitting, which is going to be, I think, our number one topic today is actually like skill development and practice, because I don't think we do a great job of that in youth baseball. We'll get into that in a second. But if you want to see what an engaging, data-driven training environment is going to do for transforming your players' attachment to the game of baseball and then their attachment to getting better, sign up for a Power Hour hitting session. You get 2 of them for free for signing up. If you want to do them on a recurring basis past those 2, you can pay for it. We would probably suggest that you're actually economically incentivized to do something like Driveline Academy Flex, because that's going to give you more training sessions, spending less money. You're working directly with one of our trainers. Like, we just got stuff for you nowadays to be able to engage with us. So drivelinebaseball.com, 425-523-4030. Talk to Emily or Dan, some of our folks in the sales department, and they'll hook you up.
If you're listening to this podcast, my guess is we don't really have to convince you to come out for a free product. This is a great way if you have a lot of friends that you have tried to get into the circle and tried to get them to understand how to do this thing better. And we're not quite there. We haven't quite closed that gap. This is a free product. great spot to bring in some of those people and allow them to get to see what this looks like, how they can train in a different way, what they're missing out on.
Yeah.
It's a really good opportunity for you to tell friends who are non-believers about this, because it is free and they're wasting absolutely nothing coming out here and trying it out.
Yeah. Which, excellent point, my friend, because I think it springboards us directly into the thing I wanted to talk about. So what I'm going to do in the edit is I'm going to slice the uncensored podcast warning in right here.
Okay.
So look, we don't do this often, but when we do it, I think we get our money's worth. So this is my warning / caveat / parental advisory notification to you, dear listener. We're just going to cut it a little bit loose today.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear some baseball coach talk. I don't know why in our game we tend to curse a lot.
I don't know. I was talking about this with my mother,
Yeah.
Who has listened to maybe a few pods, but is always impressed with my ability to turn swearing on and off,
Yes.
depending on who I'm around. And my older sister, who I love, who doesn't quite have that same ability as I do, but has way worse of a mouth than I do. And like,
Which is funny.
And the job that she has, a little harder to have that mouth. And I'm like, it's almost expected from me as a baseball coach. Like,
Yes.
if I'm not swearing, people are like, there might be something wrong. Like,
Yes.
is he feeling okay today? Like, he's not cussing.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not sure what the onus of that in our culture is, because it's just a thing.
it's a bad news bears, man. We talked about this on the movie pod,
yeah,
right?
you're right.
Like,
You're right.
we see our cultural depictions of youth coaches are drunk, overweight, abusive to kids, and they swear all the time. So
That's true.
like,
That's
that's
true.
just kind of the expectation.
Yeah. So I can tell you at 1:30 p.m. on the dot on a Monday, Jeremy are neither drunk nor inebriated in any way, shape, or form. But we are going to cut it all the way loose.
I was gonna say, but the overweight part for me at least is I'm checking that box.
Yeah, overweight for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to that guy on YouTube that keeps telling us that we're fat. It's like, okay, I know I can lift more than you, so come on. Anyways, so this is your final warning. This is going to be an unfiltered podcast. If you don't want to listen to that one, go to the last one. Go to the David Yeager podcast. Go to the Travis Snyder podcast. Go to any one of the listener Q&A electric boogaloos that we did when Jeremy was on PTO. We got a lot of other content for you that is clean and free of any of the naughty words. 3, 2, 1. But if you're still here, you picked the right one, motherfucker, because we're going to do it today. And now we're here. Let's fucking go. So Trey Hannum, man, shout out to him. He put up this great post the other day about a quote from Coach K, Coach Mike Krzyzewski.
Yep.
Even though that name doesn't look like that's, based on those letters and that amount of consonants, that's for sure not his name.
As a younger child, because this man has literally been I always liked him, but he's kind of always been like the devil since my entire life.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
Like,
how can you root for Duke?
growing up, I was born and he was already at Duke, right? It's like,
Yeah.
This guy's just there forever.
Yeah.
And I used to think it was really funny to like put a bunch of letters together that made no sense and then tell people, oh, it's pronounced like Mike. And it was because of his last name. It's like, That's not Krzyzewski. Like, I don't know how you got there, but sure.
Yeah, sure.
Great coach.
Yeah, I mean, completely nonsensical last name. Shout out to my Polish friends. Coach K has this kind of quote going around that's about youth basketball, right? So let's be specific that kind of what he's talking about is youth basketball. It's not about youth baseball, but
could be.
But
I don't even know the quote, and I'm guessing already.
But what Trey and what I and what you see is a lot of parallels about what's happening in youth sports broadly, and what Coach K says. Basically, when he's talking about youth basketball, he goes, they play a lot of games, but they don't practice a lot. And what it comes from is just a generalized concern with a coach who, as much as I hated Duke as a kid, and hated, because Michael Jordan went to North Carolina, therefore you can't root for Duke.
That wasn't the only reason you can't root for Duke, but that's okay.
Yeah, Christian Laettner exists.
Yeah.
This is a big question, right? I mean, this is, I think, the most critical thing that we need to grapple with in youth sports over the course of the next like 10 to 20 years is a distribution of time, right? How much time do we spend practicing and training? How much time do we spend playing games? And what we've seen over the course of the last 10 to 20 years is it continue to move further and further this way, where we have parents putting their teams run by coaches who are delivering value strictly through playing games. Mm-hmm. So Trey posted this up and tagged me on it, and I was on the field yesterday when we had like a mild amount of wind, definitely not anything that our friends in Florida might have experienced. No. We had a little bit of wind. And what I said at the time is the best reason that I can come up with for why we've ended up this way. And I think it's important to kind of start there before we talk about like where we need to change. But the best example that I can come up with for why we've landed in this way is the difference in like the result that we receive, right? If we go play a game, somebody's going to be a win. Somebody's going to win that game. Somebody's going to lose that game, right? In the box score, you're going to see the outcomes that each player produced. And that is a tangible thing, right? As a parent or as a coach, I can walk off the field and say, we won today or we lost. My team batted 425 or whatever, right? Our OPS was 890, right? I can extract some definitive signal about how our performance is because of the game container. The game container gives me scores and it gives me an outcome of results. And that's a real like black and white thing that I can understand. Mm-hmm. Training isn't that. Unless
disagree.
Well, okay, let me finish. I think training isn't that unless you're training with data, because without training with data, it's really hard to understand how much value did I extrapolate out of this 2-hour practice? Or again, as a parent, right? How much value did my child extrapolate, right? Because if all I get from the kid is they get in the car and I go, hey, how was practice? And they go, it was good. It was fun. I go, fuck, okay, right? It's really difficult to kind of quantify that. So for me, that's the best example that I can come up with of why we've landed this way. It's a very basic difference between a transparent understanding of the transaction of a game and a very opaque understanding of what happened in practice. And for me, that all goes down the line to like why you need to train with data and why sports like track and field sports that revolve around things like a clock mm-hmm. Are inherently better positioned to answer that question than we are in baseball, because I think as much as we do want you to come down and check out Power Hour, right? We want you to do things like Driveline Academy Flex. We want you to be on a Driveline Academy team if you're close enough, because that's the container for us to start to communicate a transparent value of what happened in practice that you kind of don't otherwise get. But that's all I got. What do you got?
So I agree with everything you said about training, and that's how to bridge that gap. I don't agree with, I think you're giving too much credit that is the main reason of why youth sports is the way we see it today. I think it's actually pretty simple.
Okay.
It's money. It's money.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing else to it, and I think you're being really generous in saying that, like, it is the main reason of why we see it this way is because coaches have an easier time with the results, if there's like tangible results with their athletes, than they do if they're just training without data, without tangible results. And like, I think we're giving coaches too much credit. I think the real reason is, and it's across every sport, there are a lot of companies, esports is a $1 billion industry. There's a lot of companies that are predicated on hosting 1 million tournaments and making money that way. And like, it is no longer, the industry generally is no longer about developing athletes. It's about making money. And like, most people don't want that to be the case. Yet they still feed into this economic engine that is youth sports, it is more expensive. So let's break the two down, right? If I'm a youth baseball coach who does not have a facility like Driveline, but I want to train athletes like Driveline does, data driven. Okay, so I now have to find a facility that I can go to that has potentially some technology and rent that space. That's a not insignificant cost. If I don't do that, if I do that, or definitely if I don't do that, I have to figure out a way to get Blast or some other technology into my team, which is expensive, right? Because now you're talking a bunch of sensors that you got to pay for and the subscription. And that's not including like Pulse, HitTrax, any of the other TrackMan, any other tech that's used. Okay. Now I also have to pay for field time for practice time. I also have to pay for tournaments. If we're in a league, I got to pay for that.
Oh, yeah.
We're doing scrimmages, I got to pay for umpires, things like that. And if I want to do all of that, I'm going to have to charge a lot of money for this team, because that is a really expensive venture if I actually want to develop these kids the right way.
Yeah.
The other option is we can just play games, right? I don't have to spend a ton of money on renting facility space. We can rent some parks or go to some public fields or whatever it is to practice and do some field practice, but it is a lot cheaper to run the program that way than it is trying to actually develop the players.
Yes.
And based on what most of the industry tells you, that's the right thing to do anyways. So now I'm having to go against the grain and pay a lot of money to go against the grain. I think it is that simple. That it's the economics around the thing that have pushed us into this situation where a part of it, you are 100% right. If I'm that guy that I really want to train these players and develop these players, but unless I charge them way too much money, I can't afford to do it in a data-driven way. So my choices are try to develop them but have no data to do that with, or bring this team together and we'll play in tournaments and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think ultimately my perspective in this issue is that, like, I am thinking about that from a lens of like how most parents understand the experience for their kids. And I think what you're landing in is like the coach's perspective, right? Which, given our two roles, is like a little bit, that's just very amusing. I guess the thing that, again, from a parenting perspective, the thing that I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around is a lot of these same parents are aware of the showcase circuit, right? They're aware of this idea that like your player, that you as a parent at a certain point should be incentivized to pay money to someone that's going to measure your player's skills and ability. Right? Like, I think that's something that's relatively common. And I say that because, Danny will send me, every once in a while, there are like these Instagram and TikTok accounts that they're like put together all the footage that large showcase companies put out, and they specifically grab the ones of kids who have no business showcasing, right? And they'll come up with these, hilarious captions about, Lefty McLefterson is a fucking, he's a 5'9", 265 pound elite athlete from, the backhand corner of name a state that you might forget about if you're doing like the list of 50 states. That's one of the last ones that you forget about.
Sorry, South Dakota.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Although North Dakota, I got people back there. So,
and I guess if you remember one of the Dakotas, you probably remember both. Yeah. So it's realistically, sorry, Wyoming.
But anyway, sorry, Dakota. And it's just like they're kind of making fun of the kids. I mean, that's what it is, right? Like they are making fun of the kids. But I see that, and like I see the parent who made the decision 2 to 4, 6 weeks prior to give that showcase company $200, $300, $500, $900 for that experience. And if you have that combination of kids who are like ostensibly just very below average in baseball skills, but parents who are aware that this amount of like skill quantification is necessary.
So I would be, because we have different viewpoints on this. I'd be very interested to like poll a large group of parents and actually kind of get to the bottom, because I honestly don't think most parents view Showcase as an assessment or a test of their abilities or anything like that. Like, so equating a Showcase, which we've done before, to like the SAT.
Sure.
I don't think parents view it that. I think parents view it much more like a college fair, as opposed to like an SAT.
Okay.
Right? There's a bunch of colleges with booths in the high school gym.
Yeah.
And Johnny's going to show, I don't know if they still do this. This is showing my age maybe. But like Johnny's going to walk through the gym and there's going to be a bunch of colleges with booths and he can stop and ask some questions about majors, what the campus looks like, things like that.
Do that. Did you see the guys who set up a booth and they were like OnlyFans?
Oh no. Did they bring one piece of paper like they did, like Michael Scott did in The Office?
I mean, they had polo shirts and everything, and they're talking to attractive women about like, hey, just it's like for career advancement. And shout out to anybody that's not a dirtbag that doesn't understand what that is. I think most people understand what that is.
Yeah. I don't think it started that way, right? Didn't it not? Well, maybe it did. I don't know.
I
I assumed it started like Substack. Maybe that's
sure
being like super kind. But
sure.
I'm gonna have content that's gated behind some sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like Medium is
and
like
then
that.
And then I feel like it turned into sleazy afterwards.
Yeah,
maybe it was created for sleazy.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that's what parents view a Showcase as, and not really this is an SAT. I need to make sure my kid is prepped to go to this and like show off his quantifiable skills.
Yeah.
I think most parents take their kids because they think this is what everyone has to do. We're going to a college fair. There's a bunch of college coaches there. You want to play college baseball? Show what you play baseball in front of coaches, and miraculously you will get scholarship offers.
Yeah.
Go talk to that coach afterwards. Right. And like I think more parents think of it as a job / college fair as opposed to like the actual testing ground that it actually is.
So, and you might be right. You think that those parents are kind of like aware. Do you think they're even aware that they're going to get scored and that the score matters?
I think they might be aware that they're going to get scored.
Yeah.
I don't think the parents have any kind of real idea of if or how much that score matters, what that score means, how to improve that score, the context of that score as opposed to other athletes their age. I don't think any of that really exists. And I think in a lot of cases, these Showcase providers have a real incentive to not provide that information.
Well, sure. And I mean, we know some literal inside baseball stuff about some Showcase providers not wanting to give their assessed athletes like the literal truth of how bad they are.
Right. I mean, like, it shouldn't be a thing that we can't say publicly that like all of these companies, no matter who they are, they're predicated for the most part. Most of their business is done off repeat customers.
Yeah.
You come to one Showcase, you're not really the guy we're looking for. We're looking for the guy who's going to come to 4 to 10 showcases across his high school experience and give us, $400 to $1,000 across his high school experience, right? Like one athlete going to one showcase isn't where they're making their bread and butter.
Yeah.
The more information that they were to give, and it works both ways, right? Like if they're giving a lot of information to an athlete who's actually good, it is probably going to lead that athlete to come back and keep testing.
Yeah.
If they give a lot of information to an athlete who's not very good, that might make that athlete not want to come back to a showcase, whether they feel bad, they realize that they're not going to play college baseball, whatever reason they have, they're a lot less likely to go back to a second one if they find out they're not very good relative to all their and so like these companies are making the choice where like we're going to let them take from it what they will.
Yeah.
We're going to provide the information and we're not going to like lead them in any direction. So like the kids that are really good are going to get that information and they're going to say, oh, hey, I'm better than all my peers. I got to keep showing up to these things to showcase and keep continuing to show that I'm better than all my peers.
Yeah.
And they're not giving that information to the younger, the worse, the lower part of that. And like some of those kids might look at those numbers and say, wow, that's really bad as compared to like some of these other kids. And some of these kids might be like, wow, I hit the ball 82 miles an hour. That's pretty good.
Sure.
Right? Because I don't have context. I don't know what that means in reference to other kids my age,
what
college opportunities, what that means.
Yeah.
And like, okay, I'll go back to another one. But the more information they get, the more informed decision they make about going to the next one. And a lot of these companies don't necessarily want them making that informed decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm thinking about this as like a choice. It's a choice to either understand the game, and I think if you grow up in American society, it's hard not to understand the game, right? Like it's just,
I don't know about today.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe not as much today, but with the parents of today, I think that's still true,
Sure.
right? Whether that, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, 20, 25 years from now, if the kids who are kids now are actually going to have that same amount of understanding and engagement about youth baseball when they were kids to want to carry that forward,
I'm curious about a lot of how youth sports change as development, or as we move closer to 2030 or whatever, and like the generations start moving up and becoming coaches and whatever.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about, I don't know if it was last pod or a couple pods ago, but we had I don't think I dropped the name of the team, but we had an NBA coach come in here and talk to us about this specifically, that like American-born players don't get any development. They're really good at jumping and dunking and shooting like step back threes, but they can't set a screen or do a back cut for the life of them.
Yeah.
And it's like it is massively hampering the American basketball player that we see today. And like it's interesting because I kind of thought over the last decade we would see a shift.
Yes.
As MLB becomes less and less American.
Yes.
And like the biggest talent becomes less American. Right. I mean, like Judge is going to win an MVP, but the other MVP most likely not American.
Correct.
Soto, Lindor, a lot of these guys that are like the big names, not American guys.
Yeah.
There's not that many American guys that are like the face of baseball, right? Yeah. And then basketball. Yeah, I don't know when the last time it was an American won the MVP. I think it was LeBron. No, maybe Steph won. But like we had Giannis, we had Jokic, we had Embiid. Like it's a lot of international MVPs.
Yeah, the world was already turned.
Right, Luka. Like I mean, like we're seeing in every sport except for football, because it's just not as popular on other continents.
Yeah,
that they're just better at developing athletes than we are at this point.
Yeah.
And like we have had this evidence, and there has been not only no change in the way that youth sports are done and development is done.
No, they're doubling down.
We're doubling down.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me. I thought that there would be a period of introspection, like, okay, how are we letting these other countries be better at developing athletes than we are? Because like, by and large, our athlete population is probably way better than these other countries.
Sure.
And we just like,
I mean, the best time to grow up in America is right now.
Right. And we're just we're taking, if we developed them, and we've talked about other countries in this pod, but like if we developed our athletes in every sport like other countries do with their sports, it would look quite a bit differently.
Yeah.
Than we do it today.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're 1,000% right. But the way I think when I'm thinking more critically about my own perspective about this, I'm seeing this as kind of like a choice between like trying to understand the game, which takes less calorie burn than trying to understand practice. But I think what you're kind of saying is that like there's no attempt to understand the value of practice. Like it kind of doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
It's like a thing that you do between games, but critically, if that's true, then the thing we really don't understand is the link between training and skill development and game performance, which is fucking sad.
Yeah.
Which is really fucking sad, because if you think about all the best sports docs that we've ever seen, right? I mean, look, how cliched are the fucking Rocky training montages, right? Dun, 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 dun. Like you hear the music and it's like, all right, fuck, man, I want to see somebody chasing a chicken and like hitting a heavy bag and running on the beach. Carl Weathers should be there,
Siberia,
right?
Yeah.
Carl Weathers should be there. Yeah. He should have like a short cropped, Jerry curl. Like I want to see all those things.
Yep.
But then when it comes to our own children, it's like game.
Well, and it's even like, and I feel like we're going to bring this up on every pod since we did the movie pod, but Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're terrible. And the whole montage in the middle, or like the middle part of the movie where they get better at baseball, is not through playing games of baseball.
Yeah.
It's through practicing.
Practice. Yeah.
And then they get back to games and they're better, right? Like, there's never been anybody even trying to make the argument, whether it's like fictional or real, that just play more games and you'll get better at playing games.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not a thing anywhere. It's like training is talked about ad nauseum.
I mean,
it's just like, you know, not everybody, but a lot of people could probably tell you what LeBron James spends on his body every year. Right?
Yeah,
like, that's like a commonly known thing. They're like, oh, he spends over $1 million on his body every year. Yet parents all across the country are just like, yeah, I don't care about my kid's body. We'll play him in terms of, like, I will never forget that NBA coach coming in and talking about the force plate jump tests and how weak the knees were of the American draft prospects as opposed to the others because of how many games they'd already played.
Yep.
These 18, 19-year-old kids were showing up to the draft and the combine, and they had the knees of a 30-year-old. And it's crazy, and it's known, and it's not changing. So AAU basketball is not changing. They're still hosting tournaments every weekend where kids are playing 3-4 games in a day.
Well, I mean, you and I were literally, I threw out like a name of a random football player, David Boston, if you want to.
David Boston.
One of the most jack dudes in, you know.
And then we were sitting there watching his child's AAU basketball highlights.
I mean, it's, you know, the kid's like a 20-39 or whatever.
And that kid might train a ton, and the highlights we see on YouTube are just the game highlights, right? Like, we don't know that. His dad was a professional athlete.
Yes.
Odds are he probably knows that his son needs to train.
Yeah.
And get better at doing some stuff.
Yeah. But like that thing, you know, it's not compelling the average AAU parent to moderate the volume of games that they're playing, right? It's not compelling the average youth travel select ball parent to moderate games. Right. And at the expense of practice.
Right. And we just hold on so tight to these outliers that go through these processes and make it as proof that these processes aren't bad. Like, the way we're doing this isn't wrong because a bunch of guys got drafted in the NBA and they went through this process.
Yep.
Great. How many people did we leave on the floor?
Yeah.
How many people did we leave on the drawing room floor there? That could have made the NBA and didn't, because we didn't develop skill and we ruined their knees by playing too many games. And you could take that, and that's the same argument in baseball with arms instead of knees.
Yes, yes. So is this all just like is it really just driven by like the keeping up with the Joneses thing by parents about like, this is just the thing that we have to do? Because like you see the memes, right? You know, where the coach is like, okay, so, you know, this Friday, you know, we have a tournament in California. We got to win 2 out of 3 there, because if we play there, then we're going to Puerto Rico. You know, we're going to get on a boat and row to Puerto Rico. And if that goes well, then we're going to hop on a plane. We're going to fly to Switzerland. We got a 3-game set. And like those memes go out and everybody kind of laughs. But I'm trying to understand, like, what's the thing that's actually going to happen to make people change behavior? You know, like, because the injury rate isn't changing behavior. The costs
aren't changing behavior.
The costs don't seem to be changing behavior. The only thing we're getting is a little bit of like have and have not effect of families who can't afford the $25,000 a summer on travel ball. So the injury rate isn't changing anything. The costs aren't changing anything,
and the results at the top level of the sport aren't changing anybody's opinion.
Correct. The signal is clear as day about what you need just to move from high school to college, right? The signal is clear as day. Smart baseball coaches are looking for metrics. That's the qualifier. That's just what it fucking is now. And you could wish for it to be something different. I could wish for a time machine, right? I would invested in NVIDIA more heavily 10 years ago, right? I bought NVIDIA video cards back then. I should have done that. I don't have a time machine. I can't change my financial investment advice. You can't change the fact that, like, you just get through this. You go through this thing once. And if you fuck it up, and you make the wrong choices for your child, or you allow your child to make the wrong choices, you don't get a fucking do-over most of the time. That's just not a thing.
Yep.
So what is going to force the change? You know, like what is it? Like, honestly, and I'll, you know what? I'm going to fucking answer my own question briefly, because I want to know what you have here. But I don't think it's going to be anybody other than us.
So
because when we send a crop of kids to college baseball, right, who didn't do that other thing, right, when we had the Lucas Rodriguez's of the world who don't play a single game of high school baseball because whatever with
politics.
that high school, yeah, because of fucking politics,
because of adults,
and then that kid gets a chance to go play college baseball. You know, I was talking to a good friend of mine who is looking at his son is a little neurodivergent, but the kid can fucking play and he can bang. And he's looking at his high school program and like he sees terrible culture. He sees terrible culture that has had poor results for previous parents and players, and poor culture that is probably not going to bode well for his son. And he sent me a question. He's like, does he have a shot at playing college baseball? And I was like, guess what? Lucas Rodriguez exists, right?
Yep.
We helped that kid, give him a system to work really hard to get a chance to open that door.
That
I don't know how else
we got multiple that are going to walk through that door.
Yep.
Unfortunately, like as unfortunate as it is, right? Well, it's an explicit pod, and I haven't sworn yet, so this answer might be fucking bleak.
Yeah.
But I don't know that honestly anything is going to really change, and I do think like a few years down the road, we are going to change things.
Yeah.
We're going to have a non-zero impact when people see, oh, they're getting kids to play college baseball in a very different way than every program is doing. And that is going to have some trickle-down effects from there. But what we do and the way we do it, it ain't cheap and it ain't easy.
You're right. You're right.
So, like, there aren't that many people that are going to fucking follow us into this fire.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people who want to and then see what it takes and take the easy path out. Because that's like human nature is like when there's two paths in front of you and one is really fucking hard and the other one is not as it isn't easy, but it's definitely not as hard, and more people are doing it, so it's more trodden, that path.
Well, and the cost thing alone, right? Like the cost thing alone, people need to understand that like we run this program as efficiently as we can relative to all the shit that we provide that, again, to your point earlier, most people don't even touch, right? Most people don't touch. When we buy things like force plates, like timing, like the laser timing gates, right? When we pay for subscriptions for all these players, so all these data platforms, it's a lot. And then we get things like, you know, some increased costs from your local Parks and Rec provider, right? Or some increased costs from the tournament provider, or league providers, or whatever. You know, it all just like, we don't want to do that thing where it's like, hey, it's 10 grand a year to do this, right? We don't want to do that. And I'm not saying that we are going to do that. What I'm saying is that like, if you're another team who doesn't have this, that is what you're going to charge your people. And I get looking at that as a coach and saying like, well, I'm going to lose half my team if I try to charge them $10,000. I got a lot of players who aren't serious enough. Yeah. For their families to spend $10,000. And yeah, you're right. You're right. And it's a so like it's a least worst outcome type of shitty choice. Yeah, you know? My answer is pretty fucking bleak. Yeah, like I don't know that there is going to be serious change unless economic incentives change around youth sports, and I just don't see that happening without some sort of federal governing body that puts in regulations around youth sports. It's almost like we have talked about this need for a national governing body that actually has some teeth and a national ministry of sport before you can go into the pod archives and see us digging into that topic. Because I just don't know how to change human behavior. Yeah. I don't know that there's a way, you know, where other than you're just going to spend a lot of time and resource banging our head against the wall trying to get people to not keep up with the Joneses, or not care about winning a plastic trophy at 9. Like it's just always going to be a thing. And, you know, I guess my naivete is showing a touch because, like, I think I have this stupid fucking belief, right, that there are smart parents out there that look at this behavior, right, and they see the memes. And those memes come from a truthful configuration of like what's actually going on and why these kids are getting run ragged and you know, flown all over the place. Like literally, I think we talked about this on the pod, but I'll bring it back up for any of our new listeners because it's germane to this conversation. the Yankees did this thing probably about a month and a half ago of like players running through the tunnel. And it was like, tell us about how much your parents sacrificed to get you here, right? And of all the American-born players, every single one of them, it was like my mom and dad for like flying me all over the place, and we had to go all over the country, and my dad would get off work on a Friday, and we didn't have the money to fly someplace, so we'd have to drive, and all that type of stuff. It wasn't so much the Ron Harper, Bryce Harper, right? And I'm aware that Bryce Harper, played all over the country and did all that stuff. But like a lot of the stories that you heard about Ron and Bryce when he was coming up was like, Ron's he's an iron worker, right? And he's waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to do extra reps with his son. And it was about kind of the narrative that I heard when Bryce Harper was coming up was about a lot of like, it was two things: prodigious physical talent, prodigious physical talent, and like insane work. And certainly, again, he got flown all over the place. He did that too, but that was a majority of kind of what the narrative that I had heard at the time. And when I see all the American-born players on the Yankees are like, they're not talking about driving; it's flying, and it's like it's constant, this constant cycle. And then the international players, a lot of it was like the sacrifice necessary to get to the United States, right? But it wasn't the showcase circuit. This is dark.
Yeah,
this is dark. This is not good.
No, it's not. And like it's across every sport, so it's not just us.
Yes,
there's like a clear need for because by and large, parents want to do what is best for their kid. And like, I don't know that we really stress this enough. We should probably talk just about the concept of outliers more frequently.
Yeah.
Just like us as a society, whatever it is, and like name a thing as an outlier so that people don't use that as an example of an average. Because I think that happens way too often.
Yeah.
And like we do it too, right? Like there are crazy youth baseball parents.
Yeah.
Outliers. There are millions of youth baseball parents in this country. The crazy ones are probably in the thousands, tens of thousands, which makes them an outlier.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing as the great youth baseball parents. The people that listen to this podcast, the dads that invest a ton of time in coaching, you guys are outliers. Congratulations, you're an outlier. The vast majority of people are in the middle.
Yeah.
They want to do the best thing for their kid. They don't have the information necessary to really make the most informed decision on what that actual best decision is. So, a lot of times, turns into groupthink. Well, if everyone else is doing this, that's got to be the right way to do it, right?
And
so
keeping up with the Joneses, right. And if they're going, then we got to go. We got to spend all this money, like
right. Yeah. So, like, there needs to be a focus on that middle group of parents and educating them.
Yeah.
On what are the pitfalls? What are the things? There are very few parents who are out there who are putting their kids in new sports who are that crazy about their kid being a professional athlete.
Right.
There are very few parents who are on the complete opposite side of like, I just want my kid to have fun and get some athletic development here. Like most parents are somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And they are the information they are being fed by and large is by travel orgs, by tournament providers, by showcase providers who have an economic incentive to give them information that might not be the best information that they could give them.
Well, let's attack the middle. So Jeremy and I did a whole podcast, I guess basically a podcast about recruiting last week that will be private for Academy. So sorry. But
join Flex.
Yeah, I mean, you could join Driveline Academy Flex and get some of that same
or teams, obviously.
Or teams, obviously. But we can talk a little bit about just like the raw reality, right? These are just numbers. So the current configuration is, to your point, the game is the only thing that we understand. It's the only thing we're really trying to understand, right? And we believe in the fidelity of the game result as like the map toward the inevitable outcome that we're searching for, right? That if we play against the best competition and we play all these games and we have all the associated behavior that trails with those two things, then like eventually we're going to get to the promised land, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, here's why that's horseshit. of 455,300 high school baseball players, you have 5.6% of those kids that go on to play college baseball. You have 0.5% of those kids that go on to play professional baseball. So the reason that you were chasing your fucking tail, flying all over the goddamn country, trying to win these stupid games, and college coaches don't give a shit is because of that fucking number.
Yeah. I mean, 5.5%.
Yeah.
You talk about what that means in relation to your 20-man high school roster.
And again,
do the math.
Do the math. You could fly. Here's a challenge for you.
If you're struggling to do the math, that's one kid on your high school team out of 20.
You could try and find as many of those 455,300 high school baseball players, and you could compete against as many of that number as you can. And let's say you spent all the money in the world and you had all the time and maybe a fucking Learjet, so you get a chance to see most of them. 5.6 of those kids, 5.6% of all of those players are going to go into college. That means the other 94.4% of them are only going to play high school baseball. So if you're a college baseball coach and you're evaluating the competitive results of a kid that is competing against a pool where 94.4% of them are not going to be good enough to play at the next level, why the fuck would you care about those game results? Why the fuck would you care? You don't. What you need to see is a kid that has skill and good competition outcomes. But hey, guess what? You can get that shit on the internet for fucking free, right? Why are pro organizations, and I'm speaking a little bit out of my ass, but I think I'm kind of right. Why are pro organizations not spending so much time scouting high school players? Because why the fuck would you? 94.4% of a potential high school draft pick, 94.4% of the kids that kid ever plays against are not good enough. And then if you think about a pro organization, hey, guess what? It's 99.5% of the high schoolers that your child is playing against are not going to sniff professional baseball. So why the fuck would you care about those game results?
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add to that. It's all very clear, and it's the frustrating part. I think the most frustrating part for me is parents understand this in other situations, right? This is not how college recruiting works,
right?
But there is like this willful thing that goes on in the sports industry of feeding misinformation because it fuels an economic engine that is that a lot of people rely on.
It's gross. Like ultimately, it's really fucking gross because the thing that I generally come back to is that parents are just so highly incentivized to want to do the right thing for their child, and that's the motivator for all this behavior, right? Like, we can sit here and look down our noses at parents and coaches that execute, I think, what would be termed a conventional select or travel ball configuration of their team nowadays. We can disparage that, but it doesn't change the fact that the parents that are in that ecosystem, Jerry Butler, I see you, they think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
they're convicted that they're doing the right thing, and the industry, I guess, is predicated on a new crop of parents showing up every single year who are 6 to 10 years away from finding out that shit doesn't play.
That their kid isn't the outlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so long as you have that new bumper crop of parents that are fundamentally ignorant, there's no nationwide youth baseball parenting manual.
Yeah. I think most parents
actually there kind of is. It's on a fucking shelf.
Not enough people have it.
Sorry, I don't pat myself on the back too often, but
I think two things are very true. One of them is, parents always want to do right by their kid and do the best thing for their kid. And the second is parents aren't always the most informed on what that thing is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get that, like
no parent in the country and no coach in the country is going to, with a straight face, tell you like, I don't think development is good, right? And we had this talk in the pod too, right? Like, I don't think development is good is great. We can all agree on that. Where we stop agreeing is, what are you willing to sacrifice to get that development?
Yeah.
What does development mean to you? And like a lot of times we're going to disagree on that, but like, what are you going to sacrifice to get that piece? And like, I think in most cases, coaches are willing to sacrifice a lot. I think that the two things they aren't willing to sacrifice, one, it's a smaller subset of coaches, and that's their ego of like, I don't understand how to do this, or this isn't the way I did it, so I'm not very good at it, and I don't really want to take the time to learn and get better and improve myself. And it's a smaller subset of coaches. It's not small necessarily, but it's smaller. And then you have the other group that it's, I don't want to, or I can't make that economic sacrifice.
Yeah.
That I need to like get the development that I want to. And therefore I'm just going to have to do it like everybody else, because like, I get it, man. You can't be in the middle. You can't say I want to do development, but I don't have the money or the resources to collect that data and be able to prove to you that development is working. And I don't want to play as many games because I'm going to prove to you that this development isn't working without the underlying economic piece of that being solved.
Yeah.
Because it's a really expensive thing to do, to give parents peace of mind that the thing they're doing is right, is really expensive when it comes to data-driven baseball training. And it's hard for me to fault a lot of the coaches who can't afford that, or wouldn't have a team if they said this is the bulk of what we're going to do. Yeah. And it's the system has to change, not necessarily like it's, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Like I am frustrated with these coaches because like personally, I don't know how you can not do it. And like, I don't know what it means to only coach games and not have development, have training, have a practice. Like I can't even wrap my head around that concept. But I don't blame those coaches because they're kind of in a no-win situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't be stuck in the middle.
You can't be stuck in the middle.
I mean, those coaches are actually better off running the playbook that they have.
Right, which is why they do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, to me, it's all economic. If it was made easier for and cheaper for those coaches to do that thing, a lot of these coaches probably would. Because, like all those parents in the middle that I talked about, most of them are rational. And if you explain this to them of why the training and development matters, they're gonna say, "Oh, it's I feel like I've talked about him on the pod several times, so I'm just showing my fandom here. But like Bill Simmons on the pod will frequently talk about youth sports and like the parent corner that he has every weekend with Cousin Sal. Like a lot of times that revolves around youth sports, and like it has several times, including this yesterday, revolved around baseball specifically. Yeah. Yesterday was hilarious. It was
check it out.
His son, they show up to a tournament an hour and a half away, and his son gets out of the car and says, "I forgot my cleats," and only has Crocs. Like I haven't seen that before. So he had to go to like a local store to buy cleats or whatever. It's a story that I've heard a million times, right?
Honey?
And I've seen. But like there's a lot of very famous parents out there who are youth baseball coaches, youth baseball parents, youth sports parents who 1,000,000% understand this concept. It's just really difficult to choose that path because like there's not many options out there. If you don't live near a Driveline, which there are now 3 locations or soon to be 3 locations, there just are so few programs that are even trying to do this thing because it is an enormous risk to attempt to do this because you're doing something different than everyone else, which is already a risk. Doing something different than everybody else is already inherently a risk.
There's like opportunity cost just making that choice.
100%.
Yeah.
Then you're talking about the economic factors that go into quantifying training and how expensive that is. And like, I don't blame the random coach in Arkansas who can't who like the best way for me to spend my money is on field rentals so we can practice like on the fields. And then these tournaments.
Playing games,
Playing games, because like I don't even if I wanted to pull all this money away from tournaments, that pool isn't big enough to help us quantify training.
All right, I got a thought. I don't know if it's a good thought, but I have a thought. So right now, the game output is very transparent and binary, right? And in the game, we don't get any signal on skill. If we can change that, does that inherently mean that skill becomes more of like a relevant consideration for the decision making about time and schedule? So right now at the major league level, right, we have on-field biomechanics through Hawkeye. You're getting more information about exit velocity, pitch speed, spin, launch angle, spray, et cetera, at the major league level, right? But at the youth level, it's completely devoid of basically any of that. And high school is largely devoid of that stuff, right? Is that a thing, right? Is that a thing that we need to build? Do we need to go out there and start running games where the output is both team outcome and individual player skill? And both of those things get communicated. So if we do that, does that change? Like, because what I'm trying to get to is a fucking swim meet. I want a swim meet with a fucking time, right? I just want times. Like, and that is what that stuff could be in baseball. But again, I recognize this, the barrier to initiating that system is hundreds of millions of dollars.
The barrier is hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. And okay, now that we have this data, how do we train skill at this specific metric, this specific data point? That's a non-zero cost, right? You got to pay for certifications of certain things. You got to pay to educate your coaches. It's time. It's money. It's not nothing. It would make a difference, no question.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not going to get us where we need to be.
I'm just thinking, like, is that a first move, right? Is that a first move that we can simply go like, look, you know, the same way that this shit gets communicated in the Fox Sports broadcast? Well, guess what? Those same inputs are being captured on any field.
Yeah, but you watched are you talking about the Fox Sports data? Or no, that was TNT. TBS that did the newscast.
It was Fox last night on the I only watched the Dodger game last night. So, big shocker.
I would throw something else out there.
Okay.
And this is never going to happen. Just to be clear, before I throw this out.
Well, I mean, my hundreds of millions of dollars of tech-enabled youth
also not
also never going to
might happen before this.
Okay.
Stop scoring Little League games.
Ho hum, babe.
So yesterday, every Sunday, I have two competing teams. Well, they're not competing with each other. I have a large group of two teams.
Yeah.
So Sundays we do an inter-squad scrimmage with the two groups. We haven't kept score yet. Yesterday, before the game, as I was expressing my preference for it to be more competitive, and like, I guess this is an important thing to say on the pod, right? So like, we talk a lot about development. There are things you can't develop in here.
Yes.
Certain aspects about competitive gameplay just kind of have to be developed through gameplay.
Yeah, the gym is for one set of things, right. but it's kind of, there's a box around the amount of stuff that can work.
Right.
Yeah.
And even practice play can iron some of this stuff out, but like game speed reps generally is the best way to iron like missing cuts, not being in the right spot for a backup, those types of things. You can go through as many outdoor field practices as you want. They're still going to mess it up in a game once things are sped up on them and the thought processes aren't so quick. When they're doing a drill of cuts and relays, they're going to hit their cut. They're going to hit the relay. They know what they're doing when it's a specific drill.
Yep.
When it's a game speed rep, that's when you start to challenge them a little bit more. Yes. So we had the conversation as a team yesterday about how I want to see a little bit more work ethic out of my group on Sundays to develop at those types of things.
Can I quick caveat? We've had this big bat speed discussion that's been rolling for like 2-3 weeks in socials. What Jeremy's getting at is the exact reason why you're fucking wrong about bat speed training. because when bat speed training is done poorly, it's done in a non-competitive setting where the competitive environment doesn't tell you that, like, bat speed training where you're swinging out of your ass and you take consideration away from hitting a fucking moving ball, that's where that goes sideways. Right? That's not an issue with bat speed. That's an issue with somebody fucking up bat speed training, because you need it to take place in some way, shape, or form in a competitive environment to make sure that the competition shapes the evolution of skill.
Right.
And it's the same with cuts and relays.
Yeah, you speed things up in a game situation. If all the cut and relay practice in the world would make people perfect at it, you wouldn't ever watch someone mess it up on a big league field.
Right.
And do I have to bring back my segment?
Right.
It gets messed up every game.
Yeah.
It gets messed up on a big league field.
Oh, the Mets fucked up a couple of like very simple defensive plays that ended up them losing the NLCS.
I mean, you had the Guardians and the Yankees in a pretty big situation with a rundown at third and a poorly executed rundown.
Yeah.
Right? And like, how many times have you seen that on a youth field and parents screaming about the kid being in the right place in a rundown? Look, when it happens in a game, everything speeds up. Yeah. Thought processes speed up. You're not making as clear and sound decisions. And like those, you need a lot of those like game speed reps to do a lot of these team defense type things. Okay, so we're talking about this, and those are the types of things at the end of the day that win and lose close ball games. Mm-hmm. I think we've probably said this on the pod. My team last year lost 12 games where the tying run had a fucking helmet on and a bat in his hand.
Yeah,
we were 17-16. 12 of those 16 losses came with the tying run on deck. Those games are completely flipped by not giving up free bases, right? By not giving up 90 feet, messing up a cut and relay, by not giving 90 feet, making one extra bad throw that you didn't need.
Yep.
Right? Like those types of things. And like that's, I'm telling my team, this is what I want to see you guys really working out here on. In the gym, we're working on bat speed. Out here, we're working on competing the game of baseball.
Yeah.
And I had 3 kids, one of them related to you by blood.
Allegedly.
Ask if we can keep score. If I'm begging them, because the other thing I did yesterday is I split the 2 teams and then told one of the teams to get their shit and go to the other dugout, so that the 2 teams were split dugouts, trying to add a little bit more competitive fire to it. And they asked if they could keep score. And I said, look, I'm not doing this on Game Changer. I'm not keeping score. I have zero problem if you guys want to keep score.
Yeah.
At the end, I asked them what the score was. They all looked at each other and were like, yeah, none of us kept score. We didn't know.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
I almost didn't say fucking, then I was like, we could swear on this podcast. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
They were out there. They had a great time. They got better. They improved at baseball. A bunch of them had really good days and had outputs that they really can hang their hats on.
Yep.
And they have no idea whether or not their team won or lost the fucking game that they played in that day.
Yeah.
So why would an 11-year-old be any different other than that's what the adults told him?
Well, I'll see you're 11, and I will raise you
an 8
you. Shout out to Sean. Sean's been a follower and a listener, an avid pod listener, and a big supporter of what we've done. Shout out to you, Sean. Sent me something because, for some reason, I think that clip about me talking about like 9U intentional walks continues to just roll around on Facebook of all places, which is, breeding
Not
ground
surprising.
for old heads and old parents like me. So Sean sends me this message. T-ball game. 8U T-ball. The coach. Fuck.
Sorry, I just saw it on his computer.
The coach walks a player to get a force at every base. In a T-ball game.
How is a walk a thing in a T-ball game?
It's a fucking great question.
Did the umpire look at him and was like, "There's no such thing as 4 balls in a T-ball game. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Like, let the kid swing."
Gave him the 4. Send him to 1, coach.
Oh my God.
Next batter up hits a T-ball grand slam. And that decision, right? That decision doesn't get made if that coach.
It's the most hilarious decision. Score. There's so many bad parts about that decision. 1, there's no walks in a T-ball game. 2, you're setting up a force at every base with 8-year-olds who are not turning a double play.
Yeah.
There's no way they're getting that guy out at home even.
Yeah.
My God.
I mean, and Sean, you're gonna have to tell me if this guy that you sent me the picture of is the actual coach or not, because I was gonna shade his outfit, but those are pretty clean Nike Air Max 1s.
I'm not gonna lie, looks like a dude who would walk an 8-year-old.
Yeah, well, yeah.
As a baseball coach myself,
Yeah.
looks like a dude who would walk an 8-year-old. Just saying.
Yeah. But again, even making that point, I think you're 1,000% right about the need to attack the middle in terms of parents with education.
They want to do the right thing, and
Yeah.
like it's there isn't enough information. The information that's out there is on like the 3rd page of Google searches.
Yeah.
Nobody gets to page 3. They don't even get to link 3.
No, I mean,
they're looking at the first 2 links on Google, and
Google doesn't even want to send you to page 2 nowadays.
Right.
Have you seen that message now?
Yeah.
It's like, are you sure?
Are you sure? Yeah, and it's like, yeah, no, it's all of the first results are going to be tournament providers. They're going to be showcase providers. They're going to be youth teams.
Yeah,
telling you wrong information, and it's not easy. Like, you can't possibly expect parents to do the other thing.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. The 2 ways that this gets fixed to me are we have some sort of national body that puts in rules and regulations and governs this shit, or that group of parents in the middle revolts and says, like, all of these dollars that we have been spending, we won't. We're going to allocate our money and our time to something else, whether it's data-driven baseball training or theater or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
We're going to devote our money to something else, and that's when all of these providers, these companies, are forced to change because of economics. So the only way to do it is either have a national governing body or like flip the economic thing on its head.
Yeah.
And force us, youth baseball organizations, tournament providers, to change what we're doing because the economics are no longer working for us.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of coaches would tell you they would so much rather do the other thing than do tournaments every weekend.
Yeah.
They would so much rather do the other thing.
Yeah.
They can't afford it.
They can't. No, they can't. They can't do that. Well, and I think the other thing that I will note is, let's say, I don't know, whoever is capable of executing this change en masse, right? If that person, he or she, listened to this pod and they made all these changes the next day, I don't know that it's necessarily all the way rosy over there either. Let me point you to 6 years old, 100 pitches today. Topped out at 37, but average was 35 with good location from 44 feet away. So this is somebody who's getting pocket radar on their 6-year-old. I saw that come across my screen when I had my once a week sit on the couch for a half hour and just scroll some shit. And I said to my wife, I was like, is this my fault? and I'm like truly not because I have an ego about shit, but just like, is this, and it's certainly not me, right?
No, like, because we had Whitey on this pod last week talking about what we should do with kids of that age.
Right.
And we have never advocated for doing that shit.
Yeah, 100 pitches at 6.
Fuck, man. 40 pitches at 6 with a pocket radar, you're doing too much.
Yeah, probably doing a little too much.
Go play catch with your fucking son. He's 6. Have fun.
Yeah.
You be the catcher. You don't stand behind him with a pocket radar. Like, what are we doing?
I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is
what is that kid learning? If he wanted to have a catch with his dad, and instead his dad's standing behind him with a pocket radar, be like, "That was only 34, buddy. Pump it harder." Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I don't know.
Would have been a much different scene in Sandlot. He was like, I just want to learn how to play catch. He's like, all right, we're going out to the backyard. You're going to throw it into a wall, and I got a pocket radar behind you.
Yeah. It's not like we're ever, I don't think either one of us believe that like the worm is going to turn and everything is just going to be like this panacea of youth baseball perfection, right? It's not going to be that way. You're still going to have people doing stuff like that, like having a 6-year-old throw 100 pitches and shit, man. If your 6-year-old wants to throw 100 pitches because they're 6 and like that's a thing that they love, then okay, but like getting the velos on it, I don't know. I have a real hard time with structured training for kids younger than 9.
No question. I prefer that to tournaments, though.
Well, sure.
Yeah. Like this, I'd rather a 6-year-old be doing that than in a tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, I thought the ceiling for Pocket Radar was actually a little bit higher.
I thought it was too.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Guess it's 35.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I thought we were going to come in here and talk more about like practice and about like the actual mechanism of how you get better at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the thing that I've kind of come around to now is just like people don't really care about that at scale.
Yeah.
Like they care about the result a lot. They care about the result a whole fucking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And they're willing to gamify that result economically as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual process of skill development I kind of don't give a shit about. And I guess, my thought about trying to bring, some type of skill output metric that runs in parallel to a game score is only to try to make that shit more relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I don't know if that's the way to do that either.
I don't think, I mean, where we're at, I don't think there's any bad answers. Throw a bunch of shit at a wall and see what sticks, right? Like something has to change because the system is relatively broken and like it might not be a bad idea to try to get some basketball guys on this podcast, some youth basketball guys from that space, right? Like, because I'm sure there's definitely a version of us in the youth basketball space, if I look closer, who is doing stuff with what I can't remember there's multiple technologies out there that I can't remember.
Yeah.
But like with certain like shot stuff in basketball, of like your or like, so one sport that we've talked about in this pod that does do it for our sakes better than all the other sports in America is hockey. Like USA Hockey does a much better job than any other sport does in here. And honestly, I think you can directly tie that to the fact that their sport is predicated on being elite at a thing that nobody knows how to do innately. You can't play hockey if you don't know how to skate.
Yes.
So there has to be the skill development of you becoming a better skater before you can play a game of hockey.
And they specifically developed like a pathway and increased the preponderance of certifications to have coaches be liable for kind of like going through that pathway, right? I know that I know the hockey thing isn't perfect either.
It's not perfect, and there's jokes about like some of the football stuff is like take away the helmets, but it's a real thing, right? Yep. Like if you take away helmets from youth football players, they're just going to develop the skill of tackling properly. Yeah. And they're going to develop a different set of skills than they do if you're putting helmets and pads on them and telling them to run into each other from a young age.
Yep. On the basketball thing.
Yeah.
So I have a guy I've known for years, Ryan. His daughter Peyton is a killer on the basketball court. And he posts a lot of her game footage. Like he posts a lot of that stuff, but they train with like this, I'm trying to find it. They train with like this, one of these like data driven basketball training things. And, like he had the output of one of her training sessions and it was just like, it was very clear, like X amount of shots, Y amount of makes, from like Z locations. Like it's just there. Mm-hmm. It's literally there. And I think about that. I think about things like Top Tracer. Oh yeah, here I'm going to focus on Peyton. So Peyton Starwalt, the kid's going to go to a D1 college. She just is. She's got a crap ton of offers. She's got her choice for where she wants to go to. But it has on one of like this thing that she does, right?
Noah. Yeah, that's Noah. The one I was thinking of. Yeah.
So 350 makes out of 435 shots, shot 80%. And it's got all this stuff about her arc, about her shot depth.
Elite shooter. 80%.
Oh, she's a killer. Yeah. She is a killer, dude. She gets buckets. Oh, and she can play too. And I guess I don't know. Maybe 5-10 years from now, things like Blast or Diamond Kinetics or Pocket Radar are going to have the same greater market penetration to shift. But I don't know, man. Like, unless we as parents start to like understand the fundamental thing, which is just like you develop skill away from the game.
Yeah, but Noah is hit tracks.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
The comparison of a blast or a pulse would be a sensor in the basketball.
Yeah, and I've seen that too.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I mean, well, actually, in youth baseball, we probably could. In real baseball, they can't put a sensor in the baseball because they recycle so many baseballs in the game. But like youth baseball, we're using conservatively, I guess, 4 baseballs in a game, unless they go into the trees or whatever. Like, I mean, we don't have enough money in youth baseball to let a ball go into the trees that has a sensor in it. But like, those types of things just aren't coming to youth baseball.
No.
We're not going to get that.
No, shout out to former Driveline coach Joel McKeithen. Hit tracks in the ball.
And like other sports, AAU could mandate that every basketball at their events has a sensor in it and give all that data or whatever. And like we're never gonna get there.
No, we can't. And this comes back to the conversation about national governing bodies. This comes back to the conversation about the split between USA Baseball, USSSA Baseball, tournament providers that use a USSSA rule set, large organizations like Perfect Game, regional organizations like scouting ones that we have around here. That type of structure or lack of structure with all these independent players that have their own incentives, that wouldn't play in a classroom, right?
It wouldn't play. Well, it would play in a lot of other industries,
right? But it doesn't play in classrooms. It doesn't play in schools. But when it comes to children and their recreational pursuits, we're kind of just like, fuck it. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
And like, what's the worst can happen is the fucking pandemic we have of youth throwing injuries right now. Like right now, I was talking to an author who's got a book that's coming out about baseball and changes she wants to see made. And she was asking me about like the long tail studies about like the current throwing injury rate that we have in baseball. And I was like, look, the problem is that like the best study that I have at scale is the one that was done, I think at like University of Texas from 2004 to 2014. Where in that the rate of surgical intervention went up massively. And that's before the large national tournament organizations that have like blown up and turned into billion-dollar industries in the last 10 years. That's before they had this big ascension. Mm-hmm. So what the fuck do you think that number looks like now? Like, what do you think it looks like now? And again, we aren't the only industry because that pairs with what we're seeing with AAU injury rates. Like, it's all pretty fucked.
Yep. My grandma, who does not listen to this podcast, I don't even think she knows what fucking YouTube is. Definitely does not want to know what Spotify is. I don't know what she was watching. I assume some sort of news channel because that's what she does.
Yeah.
A story about Tommy John epidemics in young athletes came across her TV. And I was like, they blamed us, huh? And she was like, well, they did say Driveline. But they were talking about how it's directly because kids are just throwing harder nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like, honestly, as nothing like you, I know as an 86-year-old woman that you have no skin in this game, but like, no, that's not accurate, Grandma. It's not the velocity, it's the moderation.
Correct. Because if we sold products or we trained that a number of people to have that type of effect, we wouldn't do this podcast in this room. We would do this in like a fucking glass-filled palace on top of a fucking hill with like a vineyard behind us, right? And I suppose, if I was trying to devil's advocate that, I would say, well, you guys use your position of influence to because this is what they throw at us, right? We over-index for velocity as being too important. Therefore, kids chase velocity with bad mechanics. And like, again, there are so many kids that get fucked up every single year that never throw a weighted ball once. They never get a pocket radar velo. They just get overworked to death because some fucking asshole allows it to happen.
Right. I had an older coach who used to be a Major League Baseball team doctor, team surgeon, tell me that the radar gun was the reason kids were getting hurt, as he made a 15-year-old do 180 towel throws. And this was 2019? 2018? Like, not that long ago. I mean, the man's retired from working in professional baseball, but, like, when you have people like that, just with, like, really impressive credentials behind them, saying the dumbest shit possible.
Yep.
It's there's too much misinformation around, and it's too difficult to find the signal through all that noise.
Well, and I think
right, like
I wouldn't go this far, but I suspect that there's a little bit of incentivization to remain intentionally ignorant, because if you actually move through that shit, then you come to understand the truth of it, which is just like, kids are getting fucked up because we can't stop ourselves. We can't stop ourselves from playing all these goddamn games all the fucking time.
Because I want to do it.
Yep.
I like to be out there.
Yep.
I will not lie on this podcast. I would way rather coach a game than be inside for practice.
Sure.
So much, and I'm not the same as every coach. I think I might be the only coach on our entire staff who would rather be outside coaching a game than in here coaching a practice.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our coaches would love the training part. I don't dislike the training part, but like, I'm competitive. I love that piece of it. But we, I do think to the larger public, the word driveline is very synonymous with just overall out of control speed.
Mm-hmm.
Arm, bat, whatever it is, we're just like the mad scientists who are pushing athletes' capabilities beyond where they physically should be going. And all these people have not done 1 ounce of research into what we actually do or how we do it, because it is, every one of us would tell you it's not really possible to do that thing.
Right.
Like, we're making athletes better, and we're showing them the truth of how good they can be.
Correct.
Not we are, unlocking 4 miles an hour with this one hack or whatever. But this is what we've created is, and like part of this, yes, like when you look at that Instagram post and you're like, is this my fault? It's not your fault, right? Like
we're kind of in.
We're out there.
Yeah.
We're public. People know what we are, what area we are in. Like we are in the data-driven training. We don't like bunting. We think it's more important to train than play games than never bunt. A lot of people understand that that's the space we fill. And now you have that's Driveline tells you this is the way to do it. I got a fast hack to get around the Driveline training and get you here.
Yeah.
And that's what gets the kids hurt.
Yeah.
It's not kids throwing harder. It's all the Instagram ads you see that are like, we'll get you throwing 7 miles an hour harder in 6 weeks just with this one simple trick. And like, there's so many of those out there that it inherently lessens what we do.
And like, one of the power hour sessions when we first started, the parents that gave us this really gas feedback about feeling like they had paid us $20,000. I was talking to one of the dads. We were just talking about the core function of a data-driven training environment, right? And specific to hitting. And first of all, those kids could bang.
A couple of them for sure, yeah.
Like they could bang. I was like, this is tight. Please don't change that kid's swing. Just like let him keep doing a thing.
But we had to say that multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, our trainers are like, no, just leave him alone.
Yeah.
Like literally just leave him alone. But he's telling me that there's another place that they go to, and he's like, yeah, whenever he's at the such and such place and they turn on the hit tracks, he really goes off. It's like, yeah, man, I know.
Yeah, it's almost like immediate feedback helps.
That's why we have one at every place. And again, to your point earlier, I appreciate the privilege that we have to have the economics to be able to run it that way, right? Like, but it's a series of choices. It's a series of choices about what you spend money on, about what you prioritize based on the information that you have. And
training without data is like playing Operation with the buzzer off.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm going to root around in there, and I can touch every single thing, and it's not going to matter. No buzzer goes off. I win the game. Yeah. I successfully operated on this patient.
Well, and to what we were just talking about earlier about the velocity thing, right? It's like, yeah, I'm aware of the basic mathematics that as velocity goes up, to a degree, the stress on the joint is going to go up. Like I'm aware of that stuff.
And so are the kids.
And so are the right. So
this
are the kids.
This is like there is always a risk reward trade off in this. There's no such thing as gaining velocity without, or as playing sports without risk.
Right. But sometimes the thing that infuriates me about this discussion, specifically about throwing injuries, is that there's kind of this presumption that, like, well, you can increase throwing velocity, but you still have to play all these fucking games, so then it ends up being dangerous. And it's like, yeah, the back half of that is where I have a fucking issue.
Right.
You don't have to play all these games. And again, if 95.5% of your competition is a high school athlete, and assume that it's even more than that for your 14U, 13U, 12, 11, etc., if the overwhelming majority of those kids don't move on to play college baseball, then the competition result against that kid doesn't fucking matter that much. It is the reason why college coaches are spending more time looking at your metrics and how you perform and your skills. But
wins are a team stat.
Yeah.
There's not a college coach or professional coach alive recruiting an entire team of kids. Therefore, they don't care about the team stat.
Yeah.
They're recruiting your kid to make their program better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Winning games has no bearing on whether or not coaches think your kid can make their program better. Because they think their team is already good enough to accomplish that team stat. They're trying to add individual pieces to that. It makes no sense why anybody in the planet thinks that wins as a team are good recruiting fodder.
Yeah. Again, specifically at like the high school and below level. Right. If you want to talk about college and pro ball, that's a different animal. Your 8U player playing T-ball, getting intentionally walked, that's tomato potato, right?
I mean, college ball, like recruiting, sure, but like pros recruiting, like scouting and for the draft and everything for college, they don't care about wins either.
Sure,
they're not like the program you went to really had a rough year, so like, yeah, man, I know your average exit velo was 103, or like I know you sat 97 this year, but like your team didn't win enough games, they didn't make the College World Series, so we're gonna go with this 24-year-old redshirt senior who was just like the bleeding heart captain on the team that won the national championship. Like, no, that's not happening.
That ain't happening. Yeah. So I don't know. You know, I guess I just hope / think that if we continue to regurgitate this message over and over and over, that, you know, you'll tell a friend to tell a friend, and we'll educate the middle. And I guess this is a weird one to go out and like send to your friends because it's got both of us, perhaps me cursing like a sailor.
We didn't curse as much as I thought we would.
Yeah. But look, man, if you have an opportunity, if you're a loyal pod listener, if you're part of the Academy Podcast Army, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast, the role in this whole thing that you can play is you take this conversation that we have and you share it with somebody, and just have them give it an open mind for an hour and a half about just some of the facts we're talking about here, some of the raw reality of it, some of the truth from a former professional scout. Like, these are just things that you could put out there.
And most of, and look, I'm not a parent, so I'm guessing here, but I would imagine most parents, the friends that they have are also parents, largely. Whether it's like, hey, my kid's on a baseball team, and those are my friends, like all of his teammates' parents, those are my friends, or whatever it is, you probably have friends who also have children who may not play baseball, and they may play another sport, and this problem also probably exists in whatever sport they're playing, whether it's softball or ballet or flag football or whatever it is. It's probably pretty similar, although I just threw ballet out there. Ballet could be great at training. I have no idea.
Actually,
probably pretty good.
You know where this exists also? Is dance.
Well, that's ballet. It's a type of dance. You think is that true? Because I feel like actually that's not a good example because I've seen
some of the practice schedules and they are fucking insane.
Okay, the practice schedules, but like in terms of they train a lot for an individual performance, like they do 95% of their time is spent training.
Yeah, but the training volume
And it's probably not skill development. It's just like memorize this move. I know nothing about dance. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know a shit ton about dance either, but when I saw some of those training schedules, I was like, oh, so you just don't understand anything about the role of rest.
Well, I've talked about this with Mrs. Driveline. What should we refer to Astrid as?
Mrs. Driveline.
Mrs. Driveline. Yeah. Kyle Bodie's wife. Because both of their children were Tycho now is flag football, which is hilarious. But like when they were younger, very, very big on dance.
Yep.
And oh yeah, the stories she would tell me are fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, I've seen the practice schedules.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, if you can send this out to just some parent friends and, you know, compare notes about the experience you're having, about how often you are spending kids out into competition, what the schedule looks like. You know, we've had some discussions recently about like additional training offerings we offer to Academy. And I've emphasized the need for people to understand that, like, look, if the number 1 overall draft pick, Travis Bazzana, is generally training in groups, then like your youth athlete should probably be good enough, is good to train in groups. And, you know, my kid he'll be 16 in January. I haven't gone out and like paid for a hitting lesson with anybody outside of the facility ever. And I've done a couple of them, or he's done a couple of them with one guy here, like twice. And the majority of that was really getting him a different voice other than mine to just be like, hey man, you just got to trust your stuff. Go fucking let it rip. So I don't know. I guess just point being that, like, I know we didn't talk about the back half of this conversation about like how you actually get better at something. I think we've got episodes that go into that at length. I would just say
we can talk about that in a future episode, because that is a really important thing. Like how you get better at a thing. Not a lot of people, right? It goes back to what I talked about. Like, we can raise your velocity in 7 miles an hour in 6 weeks. Like, no, you can't. That's not how you develop a skill.
Not in a sustainable fashion.
No.
Because the truth of the matter is that, like, you know, what you want to do is 3 to 4 days a week.
Consistency.
But consistently.
Nothing matters if you're not doing it consistently.
Yes. It doesn't work that way. The gains don't stick around. You're just like triaging shit.
Yeah. This is, in a lot of ways, learning a sport is similar to learning how to speak a language, learning how to play an instrument. Do you think you could pick up a trumpet once a month?
Oh, I mean, shit. When we went to
and then go to a fucking trumpet competition and kill it, like you're the opener. You're playing taps on that trumpet.
Yeah, good luck.
Everyone is staring at you. Don't worry, you've practiced once a month for this. You're gonna nail it.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah. Consistency kills.
Yeah.
Consistency kills. And if you understand that, you should understand something implicit about the way that you should spend time practicing that consistency and training versus how often you do in games. But again, like, this is just, we got to attack the middle. So hopefully if you have some parent friends in the middle that love a very, like, a salty dog podcast, this is the one for you.
And like, I would imagine, and I'm going on a limb here, because I love our listeners.
Yes.
I'm going to imagine most of them are listening to this solo and not with their partner.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not this, like, maybe they're listening to it like with a kid on the drive or whatever, but like, I don't see a whole lot of like families sitting down watching this together.
No, we're not like the Teddy Roosevelt fireside chat.
Yeah, I would imagine the bulk of our demographic is dads.
Yeah.
Who coach or are relatively seriously involved in their child's athletic development. Share this one with mom.
Yeah, man.
And like, she's probably got some friends that she would share this with. I guarantee you. Well, I guess I can't guarantee you anything. I don't know, mom or your spouse, but like, they'll probably agree with what we're saying. And if they're not as crazy into this as you are, see what they think about this idea.
Yeah, because there's
you might be too close to it.
Yeah, you can do the thing differently. There are other options out there. Like, there's different choices you can make. And again, I think it just starts with a root understanding of like what matters. you know, and what matters in a sustainable fashion. I was going to try to pull up the analytics for us about their percentage of female listeners because I feel like it's growing.
Hey now.
Let's see. Hold on. All-time numbers. We are... Shout out to the 5.8% of our audience that is female. And you know what?
So someone is a female is just as likely to listen to this podcast as a kid going from high school baseball to college baseball.
That's facts. Yes, shout out to the other 2.1 of non-specific gender people and the other 0.9% of non-binary people. Man, I appreciate you guys for being there to listen to us.
They're largely dads. So share this with your significant other. Share this with some friends that you have that you don't consider as crazy into this as you are. Yeah. Because they probably will agree, and they're probably the people we're talking about in the middle.
Yeah.
Who don't think that this system's perfect, but don't have enough information on okay, what should we do differently? How do we upend this system? Because like I said, there's two ways to get out of this. It's either a national governing body or the economics incentives get flipped.
Yeah.
And the second one might actually be more likely than the first one. It just takes a lot of people to look at this and say, yeah, this is really fucked up. Let's change the way we do this.
Yeah.
One city at a time.
Each one teach one, as the Nation of Islam used to say.
There you go.
So yeah, I know this is a weird one to say share because we cut it a little bit loose here, but I promise you we have another 73 episodes that are very, very PG that you can listen in the car with your child or your spouse if they have sensitive ears. And
your friends will fucking love it. So.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't? Look, they're cursing on Hulu shows now, right? FX is just cutting it all the way loose.
I'm bringing up my grandma twice on one pod, but she is horrified by some of the things that are said on TV. And I had to be like, well, when you were my age, they said some way worse stuff on TV. It just wasn't vulgar language necessarily, which is sad.
Yeah,
because that was acceptable language. But brother, go back and watch Bad News Bears, Grandma.
Oh, I mean, you got Ralph Cramden just threatening to beat the crap out of his wife all the time.
Archie Bunker.
Oh, yikes!
And I brought that up to my grandma when she said a lot of the people on today's shows are, and she's like, yeah, but nobody took him seriously. I was like, Grandma, so many people took that guy seriously. There are so many people in this country that are now that's a respectable man. Not everyone realized it was a satire.
Yeah, we had a little cognitive dissonance there. So yes, we will have an explicit filled pod, and we'll also use phrases like cognitive dissonance, and we'll talk about Ralph Cramden and Archie Bunker.
Archie Bunker, look at that.
We got some range here, baby. I have no idea what we're going to talk about next time.
Probably not Ralph Cramden.
Probably not Ralph Cramden. That's probably not going to come up again for another 70-ish pods. But yeah, that's all I got. Last thing I got for you, fuck cancer. Nate and Jenny, I'm fucking thinking about you guys. I am Devin. He is Jeremy. Down by Law. We'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.